All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of SpectrumCast, SpectrumCast for modern data protection. As always, joined by co-host Randy Arsenault and
Howdy.
Tricia Jang and Sean Sperry. Great to have you guys all here today. Last week, we had a really good session around container data protection. And this week, we thought we might try something a little bit different. As we start to evolve here into 2021, who knows who's going to be around over the next few weeks while we do our SpectrumCast. So we thought we might actually start a little bit early and think about what are the top 5 things you could do as a data protection administrator or data protection specialist that would help you gain better data resilience as you go into 2021. So as we started to think about this, we kind of went around the room and thought of a few things. And let's start with Randy. Randy, if as a user going into 2021, what is something you might think about as far as better data protection for 2021?
So it's good that I'm leading off as the least proficient in the arts of data protection on this group. I mean, this is like an illustrious group of SMEs, and I'm just kind of an interloper. So from my perspective, if I think broadly about data protection going into the future, I tend to look at it from kind of a macro trend level downward. And what I see as being one of the huge trends in 2021 and beyond is this rapid explosive growth within sort of IoT, edge-enabled devices, and not just edge computing and edge devices, which are pretty prevalent and are going to become a lot more prevalent. But there's kind of this emerging model, and a lot of the apex cloud providers and service providers, whether it's AWS or Microsoft or Google, and IBM, by the way, as well, with satellite, are developing this kind of hub and spoke model where there's going to be the big, kind of top dog alpha level data centers, the big honking data centers that exist today. But in addition to being edge devices, there's going to be this intermediary layer that's kind of a location aware regional cloud that can function somewhat autonomously, but can service a huge and explosively growing number of edge devices. So I think that intermediary step there, that regional location aware data center, is going to create some really interesting challenges around how do you manage data, both where it exists and as it moves from place to place, through this very, broad and getting larger hybrid multi-cloud environment. So I know we've got some interesting partnerships with the likes of Storeware with their Kodo solution for edge enablement. And I know we're going to be doing some stuff with them going forward in terms of some strategic partnerships. So I think this represents a really interesting set of challenges and an interesting set of opportunities too, as this new model starts to really develop and I think take hold and spread pretty aggressively in 2021 and beyond.
Very good. Thanks, Randy. Randy, and a lot of times you start your conversations with, kind of being the least knowledgeable about data protection. But what I actually really appreciate about the level of what you bring to the table is you have an understanding that data is really important to all corporations. And two, you need to really think about this, not necessarily from a methodology of the way folks have been doing this for years, but the whole concept around edge devices and that sort of thing, it probably isn't on the forefront of everybody's mind, and a good thing to start thinking about as we go into next year. And it's good.
Well, I mean, I get that perspective from you guys. It's like it gives me a different appreciation for how data management and data protection and reuse fits into everything we do, right? And it really does fit into everything we do. It's pervasive across the full stack, up and down, top to bottom, back to front. So that's good.
Very good. Sean, let's go over to you. Tell us a little bit about what you think might be important as we go into 2021 if you were an admin or a specialist in data protection.
Well, I think for me, this has been very much a year that the ransomware attacks and attacks on data centers have become very prevalent. Almost a day doesn't go by that you don't read in the paper about some large institution being attacked or ransomware applied and people trying to recover and do the data resiliency as you mentioned in the beginning of this. And one of the things I would like to recommend is if you go out there and Google, there's a very good presentation done by one of our subject matter experts, Dan Thompson. It's called The Top 10 Ways to Secure Your Spectrum Protect Environment. If you just go out there and Google, it'll pop up on YouTube. And it's like 23 minutes long. And what I really like about this presentation is, a lot of times people will get wrapped up in the technology and changing architectures and immutable storage and things along those lines. But really with this presentation, is about, as much as it is about that, it's also about the basic blocking and tackling of how to secure your Spectrum Protect environment. So, do you have the basics done, the things that are easily changed to make your environment more secure and to protect the data protection environment, right? And some of those things are things we all know kind of in the back of our mind. We've all been told to do them for 25 years or longer, but we kind of skip over them, right? Like, simple things like securing passwords and not having multiple administrators all use the same account when they're accessing the system. So I'd like to recommend that people go out there, Google that YouTube, and kind of take a look at it and see if it gives you any ideas or maybe some things that you can change about your environment to make it more secure. And hopefully you don't get hit with one of these ransomware incidents.
I like that you say that, Sean. What's interesting is our old general manager, Ed Walsh, used to say, don't skip a step. And when you get too complacent about something that you tend to go, oh, yeah, I understand that, no problem. Let me just go kind of solve the immediacy of whatever problem or challenge it is I have to go do. I also think it's rather ironic. We talk about the rule of threes when doing data protection, 3 copies of your data, 2 locations, 1 off-site. Now we're talking about not just a backup environment, but protecting your backup environment, which is kind of a new thing and also very, very important.
And I think also with a lot of these backup solutions, they've been in place for a while. And so they you forget, oh yeah, I need to go back and double check the security around that environment.
It's where it's like an MC Escher painting. It's tripping me out, but you're right. You got to protect your protection.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Tricia, that puts you on the hot seat. Tell us, going into 2021, data resilience, what are you thinking?
Yeah, so I'm going back to the discussion from last week, and that really has to do with looking to the future and understanding what is the container, the Kubernetes, the OpenShift environment going to mean to your environment. And so my wish is that people take a look at what's going on with this little applications in your company. Do you have some groups already using Kubernetes or OpenShift for something? Or is it something that industry-wide is starting to pick up in whatever industry you're in? And the reason I'm bringing up this is it's not just me drinking the IBM Kool-Aid here. You're starting to see Kubernetes and OpenShift and this whole environment mentioned in big publications, weekly publications, national publications. You're seeing it talked about on a lot of different levels. I'm seeing a lot of interesting startups in the Silicon Valley coming out around these environments. So it's happening, and you all need to take a look at how is it going to impact your data environment.
I'm glad you brought that up, Tricia, because I always think it's an interesting relationship between the vendor and the customer. From the standpoint of the vendor has some solution or technology to go sell, let's say in the data protection case, it's IBM with Protect and Protect Plus. We've done a lot recently to talk about protecting containers, but our relationship inside the corporation tends to be at an infrastructure level, and not for any other reason other than that's traditionally who the acquirer of the technology was. But we're slowly starting to see that the folks who are starting to acquire the container infrastructure and building these applications and needing the speed of that, not necessarily being the infrastructure people. And it can really catch the infrastructure folks off guard if they're not aware. So I like that. Let's reach out from our own infrastructure administration standpoint and find out what's actually going on and making sure we're not missing anything. Because if we do, it could be catastrophic, whether it be a ransom attack, whether it be non-compliance for storing information. I mean, it could be any of those things. So good advice.
I think the container stuff is not only, and this kind of goes to what you said, Steve, it's not only about the technology, but it's really an entirely different way of thinking about the processes and the ways you do things in IT. And it's quite a change from the way things were done in the past.
Yeah.
It takes the infrastructure people a lot of time to kind of get used to that, to understand it, to understand the benefits, et cetera.
It's kind of the DevOpsification of everything, including data protection, right? So the whole modality of how services are designed and delivered and QA'd and modified and sustained has changed, right? So the whole model, top to bottom, has to change. And it's cool that you guys, as kind of the deep domain experts who've been doing this a long time, are quickly adapting to the new world of containers and serverless and microservices. And it's cool to see our clients making that shift and that kind of evolutionary path as well. It's very cool.
So Steve, what's on your list of end of the year list here?
Thanks for asking. I mean, I think for me, ever since the days when I was an analyst and just witnessing this explosive growth of data, that knowing data protection the way I do and the challenges that we've gone through history in meeting recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives, that data classification, which I used to preach back then, not a lot of folks took into account as much as they should have, is now more paramount than ever when I look at an environment. So I have different data types that support different aspects of my business, and I want to make sure that I'm protecting those in such a way that it's landing on the right device such that it can help me meet my recovery point objectives as quickly as possible. I don't want to stream 100% of my data to one platform and expect whatever that stream is, if my important data is at the end of it, to actually know that I'm going to hit my recovery point objectives. It starts to become impractical these days with the amount of stuff that we're protecting and the amount of locations and the things that we're responsible for. So my advice this year would be get a really good understanding of the different data types you have in your environment, their importance to the organization, the true SLAs for those segments, and making sure that you're storing them or protecting them on the right assets for your secondary media.
And that even plays into Kubernetes, because when we start talking about protecting assets out there, protecting by labels and all becomes a big issue. So as you're implementing these new ideas, you can be using these other ideas to make them better.
Yeah, the kind of richness and enhancement and curation, advanced curation of metadata, again, is another one of those things that touches every part of the stack and every part of the service delivery kind of model and workflow. So data protection and data reuse and management is an obvious place where it becomes super duper important. In fact, I would say one of the most interesting applications of our Spectrum Discover solution, which is our newish metadata curation and management facility that I saw, was in conjunction with Spectrum Protect. Its ability to do that kind of mining of the metadata to quickly find backups and archival data using that kind of metadata tagging and automated ingest facility, which was really cool. So that is a big one.
So I think we've got 4 really good thoughts. And again, it's not difficult to do. Think about the classification of your information, thinking about what's going on at the edge. Know that you're going to get attacked by ransomware, so make sure that environment is hardened, and think about the future of containers and what's going on in your organization. I think one big thing to round all of this out that kind of ties to the classification component a little bit is that as environments have continued to evolve and grow over time and take on new personalities with things like virtual environments, new types of applications, now we're moving to containers, to take a step back for a moment and think about your overall data protection environment. And do you think it's going to meet your needs for the next 3 to 5 years? Start architecting it today to make sure that it can achieve those objectives with what we know today, with the different technologies that we know today. And coming into next year, into 2021, we're going to be having a special SpectrumCast segment with our customer support team, as well as our development team, to kind of play out ways of thinking about your particular environment and how you can, while it's basically changing the tires on the moving car, how you can make it stronger and more robust for things to come into the future, so that you don't fall down when you need that instantaneous recovery. You guys have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think it's just changing the tires on a moving car. I think this is, looking to see what am I going to upgrade and what's my next car going to be, and what other, hey, I've got all these other applications coming on. I need a bigger car, whatever the car analogy takes you with. It's not just the moving car.
I think the car is always moving, right? So you better be doing this every year type thing, right? Because the industry is not standing still and the world is not standing still.
Well, and if the car's not moving, then you're going to be, looking for a new job. So you want to make sure the car's still moving. But that is interesting because that does, I think, tie all these things together in a way, because that vision or that architectural process, that design process, pulls all these things together. It's, the robustness and resiliency of the environment, the ability to understand the metadata and use it and leverage it, the ability to apply it across bare metal or virtualized or containers or serverless. It kind of pulls all those in. So it's an interesting, and I think next year is going to be an interesting year for that, for the convergence of all those things into this kind of architectural, design thinking process that our teams in the field are using. So.
Great. Well, before we get through to the end of the year, I'm sure we're going to have a couple more of these, and I've got some interesting ideas of some topics we can pick for the next couple. But I do want to say thank you all very, very much for this year's participation in the SpectrumCast. I've really enjoyed learning from all of you, getting new concepts and ideas. I hope we're sharing new concepts and ideas that both our clients and our sales teams enjoy and find useful and find valuable. And I personally just want to say thank you to all of you.
And where can people put ideas in if they want us to pick up an idea?
You read my mind, Tricia. I was just going to say, if you feel free to ping us using whatever means you want, email, Slack, LinkedIn, smoke signals. I mean, whatever you want to do to get to us with ideas. I mean, we want to make sure that this messaging and this vehicle is for you. I mean, it's ideas that we think are interesting and that we like talking about. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't value our clients and our partners and sellers, then, we're kind of missing the mark. So if you have any ideas or there's anything you want to know about, please let us know. And
to give you a little sausage making about the SpectrumCast, each week we do one. We film it on Thursdays. We get it ready for publication for Tuesdays. We put it in Seismic for our internal teams and our business partners. We put it on LinkedIn for anybody subscribed to the Spectrum Protect Professionals group. So if you're there, you can see it. You can find this on YouTube, just standalone. You can find this on my blog, The Storage Alchemist, and you can find it in the IBM community, which is specifically for clients as well. So if you don't know, there's no excuse. Right, there's no excuse. It's widely available. Not to try to find us. Next time you're in a taxi cab, when we're back in taxi cabs again, it'll be on the little display on the little display. We used to say, put it in all the watering holes where the horses like to go drink, right? So we're trying to make it as available as humanly possible for everyone. And if you have no ideas of places to put it, again, let us know. Hit us up in Slack, social media, anything. Cool. We appreciate it. Great. Well, everyone, thank you all. We'll see you next Thursday for another exciting one. But this has been a good one. Thank you very much.